Hi everyone, this is Sophia Smallstorm. I'm here with another podcast. This is my third podcast for the month of July, a little unusual, but it was precipitated by a series of very interesting conversations I had recently with a woman who is quite amazing in my opinion, and I think in the opinion of a lot of other people. She is Dr. Rima Laibow. She was trained as a medical doctor, but has since departed from practicing allopathic medicine and has expanded into her own, I'll let her describe to you herself what she does, her own way of treating, product line, advisories, etc., including her own radio show. Welcome, Dr. Rima. How are you?
Thank you so much, Sophia. I am, while you're sweltering in the summer of the Northern Hemisphere, I'm in winter in the Southern Hemisphere in a nice woolly sweater. I'm well, thank you. And let me say that it is always a delight to talk to you. I learn a great deal, and our conversations are highly stimulating because of the quality of your thought and the way you gather information and process it. So it's always very exciting. I, by the way, never practiced allopathic medicine. On my very first day of medical school, my professor of pharmacology told the medical school class that every drug works the same way. Every drug, which of course is the whole point and purpose of allopathic medicine, the distribution of pharmaceuticals, every drug poisons enzyme systems. And given that enzyme systems are the very stuff of life, and that in every cell at every moment of our bodies there are about 35,000 enzymatic processes being carried out at the same time, it made no sense to me to use drugs. But in order to be graduated as an allopathic physician and get my license, I had to learn what it was that they wanted to teach us. But I never practiced it. I've practiced drug-free psychiatry and medicine since my graduation from medical school.
Now that you remind me, that's right. I remember you explained this before, and I'm very admiring of that kind of a decision, because you're really pushing a big rock uphill when you're one of the few people that resolves to do that. And if that's ever made known, you get severely, I would imagine, ostracized, criticized, and all of that good stuff, right?
You could say that, yes.
But you are a brave woman, Dr. Rima Laibow. I mean, anyone can tell that just from the way you talk. And it's great that you've persevered and you've been around doing all this for so long, and that you're kind of a leader in this field, I would say.
Thank you. I would like to let people know that my communications and my blogs and my ebooks and my articles and my presentations are available at the website of the Natural Solutions Foundation, of which I am the medical director. And the Natural Solutions Foundation principal website is Dr. Rima Truth Reports. That's DRRIMA, truthreports.com. And it's all about truth. You are suffused by lies in almost every area in which anybody is trying to communicate with you officially. And if they're using technology, they're probably lying to you. So finding the truth is incredibly important. And that's what I admire about you, Sophia. You dive for the truth no matter where it leads, no matter how murky and messy and dirty the water is, where you have to swim to find the truth. And that's what I do. And that's what Ralph Usatola, my co-trustee, and General Burt, the president of our foundation, do. It's about truth. And we make every effort to present it, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. And it's uncomfortable.
Well, thank you for that, and I'm glad we're chatting. And now we should stop patting each other on the back, and we should get busy with this show. So, I like to go step by step, and I like to think for my listeners as well while I'm hearing what my guest says. And so the first question I'd like to ask you, so that we leave no stones unturned or unexplained, is you said a little while ago that in med school you were told that every drug poisons enzyme systems. So I'm going to ask you, could you quickly define what an enzyme is?
Enzymes are little protein machines. If you imagine a transformer toy that can turn from one thing into another, it has joints and it moves. Well, think about a protein that is specifically constructed to pick up something and move it somewhere and drop it, and then go back and pick up that same something again and go over, put it somewhere and drop it again. That little action is the entire reason that the little protein machine exists. It's a kind of robot, a bio-robot, if you will, and the activity of the body, the capacity to carry out biochemical actions, generate energy, digest, think, walk, talk, live, all of that depends on these tiny little bio-robots moving something and picking it up and moving it someplace else. And they do this action endlessly until they wear out, and then they're replaced by another set of robots that make new ones, a new replacement enzyme when it's needed that does the same thing. It's like a super automated factory where the robots repair themselves. That is the mechanism of life, of movement, of metabolism, of building up and of tearing down cells. If you think about the fact that we have about 10 trillion cells, not counting the bacteria in our gut, which are doing the same thing, but they're on their own for this discussion. If you think about the fact that we have about 10 trillion cells, and at every moment, the processes of the cells, including their mitochondria, the enzymatic processes include about 35,000 simultaneous enzymatic operations, that little robot thing that I talked about, 35,000 times all of the, or repetitions by different enzymes of all of the things that they do. You think about poisoning enzymes and you say, well, that can't be good. And you're right. It can't be good. It's not good. Now, do herbs and nutrients poison enzymes? No. They work in a totally different direction. They support the enzymatic function. They support the metabolic functions. They support the healthy functioning of this whole system, which is why herbs and vitamins and molecules like CBD and nanosilver, magnesium, iodine, support health and restore health, whereas drugs interfere with health and destroy health.
Okay, that was a very good explanation. And what you actually said in the beginning was, quoting this other person, this instructor I would imagine, is that drugs poison enzyme systems, and that really is a problem, because that's the whole mechanism, the mechanisms, plural, being compromised. And then you don't have metabolic balance.
Correct. You don't have homeostasis. And without homeostasis, you have illness. And you have decline, you have decay, you have eventually death. Let me point out that this little robot that I talked about, the bio-robot, puts that something, let's say a molecule, into the next bio-robot, which then does something with it and sends it on to the next, and the next one carries out a process with it. So there's a cascade of events, and if you stop that cascade anywhere, everything downstream, and it's quite complicated, everything downstream is screwed up. Now, let's talk just for one quick moment about a very common class of psychiatric drugs, SSRI inhibitors. It turns out that people who take these so-called antidepressants, which don't work and cause horrible brain damage that's quite permanent, also tend to develop bone cancer more than other people who aren't taking these same drugs. Why? Well, it turns out that the same SSRI receptors that are messed around with in the brain are very, very frequently found in the membrane that covers every bone in our body, the periosteum, or near bone membrane. And so when you interfere with those, you change a whole different cascade that has nothing to do with mood, but has everything to do with the biochemical cascade health of that part of the body. These things are also found in the gut. Mother Nature is very thrifty. She does not waste anything. So the fact that we think of an enzyme or a synapse functioning in the brain with certain enzymes doesn't mean that it's not also happening in the gut, which is very much like the brain, that it's not also happening in the bones or the muscles or the eye tissue. So we, in our naivete, think that we can play enzyme God with drugs and with organ transplants, and we are wrong.
Yeah, well, of course, but I don't, the whole model of allopathic medicine and the way that it's been sold to the public is that it's a solution bringer, and it's bringing solutions from a different kind of place, you could say, from drugs, chemicals, man-made compounds, and man is so smart that he has figured out how to put B, C, D, and Q, R, S together, and it's a pill, and you pop it, and that's it. You're going to be fixed.
It does bring solutions. It brings solutions to too many people on the planet. It's a depopulation tool. John D. Rockefeller Jr., the genius of pharmaceutical medicine, as well as many other things, was also a leading depopulationist. He introduced eugenics to Germany, as a matter of fact. It's a solution to a corporate wet dream, which is be the largest industry on the planet. And that's what the pharmaceutical industry is, by inducing illness and then convincing us that the cause is something different, but the cure is, the problem is always a deficit of the drug. We need the drug in order to be well. The entire planetary population is being sickened. Of course, vaccines help that process along, made by the same people, is being sickened and is being fleeced of its health, of its vitality, of its reproductive capacity, and of its money.
Yes, thank you for reminding us of that. Now, those very interesting discussions that we had recently began because I have someone close to me that's been going through what is said to be kidney failure and was on dialysis. And I tried to be of help and suggest some alternative ways to boost kidney and overall health, and with certain products that were herb and mineral based. And ultimately, dialysis was resorted to, and at that point I didn't offer anything else except for moral support. And as you and others explained to me, dialysis, peritoneal, which is the lower level of at-home dialysis that they offer you, versus hemodialysis, where you have to go to a center 3 times a week for 3.5 hours or so. The peritoneal dialysis involves putting an actual open wound in the abdominal cavity with a shunt, and then pumping during the night, usually, a dialysate fluid mixture, that's what it's called, into the peritoneum, and this supposedly does the same job, or an almost equivalent job, to what the kidneys do. And when I later looked into this, I was absolutely appalled. On first hearing the very, superficial description from someone is also close to this person who's close to me. I thought, how could that work? But then when I read about it, I was really thunderstruck, because I can't imagine that anyone would think that this actually works. And so I talked to you about it, and you explained an aspect that I had forgotten, which was the osmotic exchange between cell and blood vessel barriers. But I'm going to go into the construction of the peritoneum and describe it, and then describe what I've learned, and you can feed back in any way you like. So here's what I learned. Inside the body, first of all, I'm going to throw in a little Chinese medicine that I learned the other day. The kidneys are the deepest organs, the most protected organs we have. They are literally the basement of the soul in Chinese medicine, right? And they are harbored deep in our body. They are doing the job of filtration of the blood. They get 25% of the cardiac output right out of the aorta. And they each have 2 million nephrons in them, which are these tiny filtration, you could just say pockets. And their job is actually intelligent, I learned, in that they know to return the minerals back to the bloodstream. They filter the waste products, but they return the minerals. So in this dialysis, the peritoneum is like an apron. It's like a barrier, a tissue barrier. It runs from basically your throat down to the bottom of your hips. And it protects or buffers your internal organs, which are on one side of it, your vital organs, from your abdominal wall, your abdominal muscles. And the peritoneum has 2 layers. There is the parietal peritoneum, which rides alongside the abdominal wall and the muscles. And then there is the visceral peritoneum on the other side, which abuts the vital organs. Now, the visceral peritoneum itself has 2 layers, and it is called the mesentery. And I learned that in that mesentery are the blood vessels and the nerves that feed the vital organs. So peritoneal dialysis involves penetrating into that mesentery and flooding it with this bath of dialysate, the fluid that comes in bags to your house. It's delivered every week in bags, which are in cardboard boxes, a tower of boxes. And this fluid is pumped into you while you're sleeping or trying to, and it bathes those blood vessels, and its content is sodium chloride, NaCl, table salt, sodium acetate, potassium chloride, and some magnesium chloride, and a little glucose in some instances. So what you explained to me, Dr. Rima, which I had forgotten, was that the exchange of the materials, the intracellular materials, which contain wastes, and nutrients and enzymes, which the cells are trying to use, and what's in the small blood vessels, the semi-permeable blood vessels, the capillary level, that they're delivering oxygen and nutrients and all these important building materials to the cells, that there's an exchange through that semi-permeable membrane. And that exchange goes on all the time. So when that exchange is going into this dialysate fluid, in my understanding, the cells are losing half of their important materials, too, all the time. Is that not correct?
Well, look at it this way, Sophia. If the glomeruli, those tiny little filtration systems, the intelligent filtration systems in the kidney, if they were not necessary, you remember that I said Mother Nature is thrifty, we wouldn't have them. She wouldn't have wasted the energy on creating them and the energy that they take, oh my goodness, and the energy that they take to run. So they do something that simple peritoneal dialysis and filtration doesn't do, or we wouldn't have kidneys and we wouldn't have nephrons. And what they do is mineral sparing. as you said, they save the minerals. What they also do is to selectively get rid of toxins, poisons, things that don't belong there, and save not only minerals but nutrients as well. Otherwise, 25% of the cardiac output would be stripped of its nutrients every time the heart beat, and we would very soon be in very, very bad shape. So, when we substitute the peritoneal sac, and that's what it is, it's a double sac. When we substitute the peritoneal sac for the kidneys, we lose a lot. Not only do we lose the comfort of sleeping without a port into our bellies, and the potential for infection and so on, so on, so on, we also lose the potential or the possibility of decent kidney function. Now, if people are in fact in dire straits and they're in kidney failure, well then, maybe that's an exchange we have to make. But as you and I have spoken about, there are an awful lot of people around the world who are being told that they're in kidney failure, who we have to ask some questions about. And by the way, one of the reasons that people go into kidney failure in large numbers is the agrochemicals that they are either exposed to when they're growing food using Roundup and nicotinamide agrochemicals, pesticides, herbicides, etc., or in their foods when they eat the foods that have been grown with these things, and their kidneys are then poisoned by them. So we're talking about an industrial environmental catastrophe in those people who actually do have kidney failure, and an iatrogenic atrocity in those people who do not have kidney failure. And let me add one other factoid here that I think is relevant. Now, the situation you're dealing with is in a country with a nationalized health service. So what I'm about to say does not apply, but it does apply to the United States. And that is that there are only two classes of physicians who are permitted to profit from the drugs that are sold to their patients. If I write a prescription, I never write prescriptions, but let's assume I were to write a prescription, you would take it to the drugstore if you didn't understand that you shouldn't fill prescriptions. But you would take it to the drugstore, and somebody would make a profit from selling you that drug. But by law, it can't be the doctor, unless the doctor is a medical oncologist selling you chemotherapy drugs, or a dialysis doctor selling you dialysate and dialysis drugs, and so on. A study was done of European dialysis patients where the doctor cannot, by law, make any money from the sale of the drugs, and U.S. dialysis patients. And it was concluded that these doctors had studied together at the same institutions. They were using the same material and the same dialysis techniques and machines and so on, but U.S. patients were dying 600% more than the patients in Europe using the same machines and treated by people trained exactly the same as the U.S. doctors. And it was determined that the U.S. patients were receiving 6 times as many drugs. And then you ask, well, who benefits? The U.S. dialysis doctors were asked whether the fact that they make a profit from every kidney dialysis prescription and drug issued, whether that had anything to do with their decision making. And 100% of them said no. Everything I do is in the best interest of the patient. And yet equivalent patients were 6 times as likely to die under the hands of the American dialysis doctors as they were under the hands of the identically trained European doctors who made no money from the dialysis process other than their salaries. as employees. Now, what does that tell us? It tells us that the escalating number of people who are told that they have symptom-free kidney failure, they're urinating, they're putting out sufficient urine, they don't have neural toxicity, they don't have itching skin, they don't have all the other signs of kidney failure, but they're told that they need to be on dialysis. Well, we have to ask whether that's in the best interest of the patient or not.
Now, these symptom-free kidney failure patients, I have actually spoken to different people who are on dialysis as I've become more and more curious about it. And I've asked them, are you peeing? And the answer is yes. Is it normal? Yes. Does it look the same? Is it the same amount? And they say yes. And
but Sophia, the question can't be for people who are on dialysis, are you peeing? Is it normal? Does it have the same pH and so on? The question has to be for people who have been told they need dialysis. Are you peeing? Is it a normal volume? Is it a normal color? What's the pH? What's the specific gravity? Is all that normal? And if it's normal, then how can you be in kidney failure? Because if they're in dialysis, you've introduced volume to what they will be putting out.
Okay, I'll correct myself. I meant dialysis candidates.
Okay.
And then one person was already on dialysis whom I asked. That's why I mixed them all up together. But yes, I asked that question and then it puzzled me. Well, what is kidney failure? So there was a test that's typically done to see this CK level in urine. Now, CK, creatine kinase, there are 3 different kinds. It's a muscle enzyme involved in the regeneration of ATP, and its 3 forms they originate from different muscles. So the striated skeletal muscles produce one type of CK, and there's a molecular way of distinguishing, but I haven't written those down. And then there is the heart or smooth muscle that produces a certain kind of CK. And then there's the brain. So the CK that shows up in your urine is typically when the striated muscles are leaking myoglobin, their protein that carries the oxygen from the cell wall over to the nucleus. Right. So this is an indication, not necessarily of kidney failure when you have high CK in the urine, but of muscle cell wall degeneration, because you've got leaking myoglobin.
There's that too, but think about the fact that these nephrons, these little filtration pockets in the kidney, are supposed to keep the CK from leaking out. Now, the problem is not the CK necessarily, it's the fact that the nephron's function has degraded to the point where it can't filter it out, where the mesh has become too large and things are leaking through. So they use that as an indicator. There's always striated muscle breakdown. Cells are always being broken down and they're always being repaired. So there'll always be a certain level of creatine phosphate, kinase rather, being produced. The question is what happens to it. And if it's allowed to leak through, it's a general indication that the kidney nephrons are not doing their job, in the same way that we hear a lot about cesium-134 and cesium-137 from, for instance, Fukushima, as if the only thing that we have to be concerned with is the cesium-134. No, that's an indicator molecule because it's only produced in nuclear reactors. It does not occur in nature. And therefore, the cesium is used as a general measure. If there are 60 billion becquerels of cesium-134 in the bluefin tuna, that's the wrong number, but if there's an elevated radiation level of cesium-134 in the bluefin tuna, that's the indicator that they're measuring. But every other radioactive isotope that was produced in Fukushima will also be high in the bluefin tuna. It's just the index molecule that they follow. in the same way that the CK level of striated muscle is the index molecule or index level of that molecule that is followed. And it's taken to be a general indication of general glomerular failure.
Yes, I understand that. So on a daily basis, as we go through the motions of life, depending on the demands placed on the body, some people like construction workers, I spoke to a baggage handler for Southwest Airlines, and he told me that he heaves and moves and carries and drops 12,000 pounds of luggage a day, and he's in his 50s.
And it's all mine, and he broke everything in the suitcase.
No, I've seen that though. I've seen that. No, he was an older guy, and I'm sure he was respectful of people's luggage, but I was stunned to hear how much physical work he does over the course of a day. And by the way, I sold him magnesium cream, and he tried it out. He put a little on his knee, and then he came running back to me, and he said, "Give me more of that." And the pain had gone away in a minute or two. So that was good news. Anyway, so the amount of work, the demands placed on the body also indicate the level of waste materials. And if the kidneys are doing their job, then you'll have the proper level showing in the urine. They test the urine for CK, and that's an indicator of whether you have kidney failure or, as I tried to bring up a little earlier, whether you have muscle cell wall failure on an epidemic level, which can also be a condition. That's produced, you're the one who clued me in, by statin drugs. Statin drugs blow holes in the cell walls. They literally blow out, they're gunners for cholesterol. They'll blow the cholesterol out of the endothelium in the blood vessels, and they will definitely create now leakage.
There is a condition named rhabdomyolysis in which the muscle cells are lysed or broken apart and it's caused by, among other things, statin drugs. Now, if you have enough rhabdomyolysis going on to cause pain, you might go to your doctor, and your doctor might actually make the diagnosis and might be smart enough to say you have to stop the statin drugs immediately. But if it's subclinical and you don't have pain, or if you don't go to the doctor when you have the pain, or if the doctor misses the diagnosis, you will have lots and lots of cell wall damage, leading to lots and lots of striated muscle CK in your kidneys, and the doctor will very likely say, "Oh, look at that, you're in kidney failure," never thinking, why do you have this elevated CK level? Could the problem be exactly as you're saying, Sophia, a cell wall issue, which is just showing up in a downstream test?
Right. And I did a newsletter recently on rhabdomyolysis, or rhabdo as it's popularly referred to, because it's becoming a little more noticeable now in the society due to an explosion of the fastest growing gym in the world, which is called CrossFit. And CrossFit was started by Greg Glassman from the San Fernando Valley. He was very adept at cross training. And he was a little bit of a difficult personality, but very good at his various programs that he posted online, his programs to create the uber fit athlete. And CrossFit has taken off like a rocket. It's receiving 150 applications for franchises every month. There are hundreds in California. They're exploding all over the world. And they're equipped with all different kinds of training equipment, from rings to the dumbbells to you do a huge number of different motions in order to promote all 10 kinds of adeptness and functionality and strength. There's a CrossFit motto, which is "do not quit." And one of the training methodologies or workout methods is to partner with someone. So let's say you and I, Dr. Rima, we go to the gym, and we're going to we're going to do a workout together, a partner workout. So let's say we're concentrating on our upper body, and we're going to do pull-ups and push-ups and bench press, and I do 10 of this particular thing, you do 10. Then I do another 10, you do another 10, I do another 10, you do another 10. Then we go over to the bench and we press, and I do 10, you do 10. Then we go to another thing, we do pull-ups, 10, 10, 10, 10. So the idea is you don't want to be bested by your partner. The best case scenario, you and your partner want to quit when you're both fatigued and you can't do another set. But you don't want to be the loser, right? So this is what promotes the over effort in a lot of people. They will do just one more set. They will grind through the pain. In fact, I was reading some blogs by CrossFit, the CrossFit adherents, and one doctor, she was a gynecologist, she actually posted a comment that in her opinion, as a medical doctor, it's perfectly fine to lose control of your bladder while you're doing a CrossFit workout.
Ah!
Yeah, and so people have rendered themselves incapacitated by the extent to which they push in these CrossFit gyms, and they're proud of it. And some of them have ended up with spinal cord injury in wheelchairs, but it appears that many of them develop, after the workout, rhabdomyolysis. So the typical scenario is they will leave their workout spent, their muscles will be wobbling like jelly, and they'll run home or drive home and jump in a bathtub of ice and rest the next day. But in certain instances, the muscles that are wobbling like jelly don't recover, and they inflame. Now you get these big sacs of fluid inflammation in, let's say it's your upper body, in your arms. And then the next morning you can't even brush your teeth. And then you go to the ER and they say, my God, you have rhabdomyolysis. And they test your CK, which can sometimes be as high as 50, 100,000. And they say, well, you've got muscle cell death, because your cells explode at that point. They go through all their different choices, your muscle cells, when they're put on such great demand for work, that they'll go through their respiration, they'll go through fermentation, and then they'll actually eat their own proteins, because muscle cells know how to ship their proteins to the liver, and then they come back as glucose, and they can make a little more fuel. But when they expend all their different options, they will just outright die. Boom. Sudden death of the muscle cells. And the reason why the muscle cells have these different possibilities at their disposal, some extreme, like using their own proteins to consume themselves, is because, let's say you're lost in the wilderness, you have no food, you're starving. You could use that extra bit, that last ditch effort of the body to consume itself, to crawl back to a place where you can find, shelter or rescue.
This is a primitive survival mechanism from our evolutionary course when extreme hunger, deprivation, and fatigue were related to efforts to survive. Absolutely. There's no question about this. This is an adaptive capacity because the body thinks about the immediate survival. We're supposed to be smart enough to think about long-term well-being, but obviously we are showing recidivism to primitive thought processes at the CrossFit gyms.
Right. And it's become, the trend. It's cool to be doing CrossFit and to say you can do CrossFit. CrossFit, in the old days, just recently, triathletes were considered the super athletes of our time because they did swim, bike, run. But the CrossFit people, they actually do power workouts. It's not endurance stuff. It's power stuff. And you see them lifting all this, and then they jump to the rings, and they can do this. And they're a very certain special build. They're wiry and very tight, and they tend not to be huge, but a little smaller, but extremely tough people. And the spirit, as Glassman says, you're not going to believe this, but he says that he is building people of the future. And he, by doing his CrossFit workout, you're preparing yourself for war, earthquake, a diagnosis of leukemia.
What?
Yeah, you're mentally preparing yourself for the worst. This is the supposed, what is it called? Mission statement, something like that. Yeah. Anyway, so just to cover the range of what can cause rhabdomyolysis, it can be caused by crush injury, when you're pinned under a bus in an accident or under debris in an earthquake. Your body, with the pressure on your limb or limbs, the muscle cells will crush, and the enzymes will leak out, the CK and the myoglobin, and show up in your urine if you're rescued. Now, marathon running is another thing that can produce rhabdo, and I ran a marathon, I'm sorry to say, I was very undertrained. I did it, but it was a stupid thing to do. And after I finished, I went to the bathroom, and typically if you have rhabdomyolysis, you have high CK in your urine, it will be the color of coffee or Coca-Cola. And that's what I saw in the toilet. And I just never saw anything this color before. And I decided, well, I just must be very dehydrated. I didn't know that I was seeing the sign of CK. And I'll tell you, my body was in a mess for a long time afterwards. I never went for medical help because I didn't know, but I did recover. And so marathon running, snake bite, heat stroke, there are many different conditions that can cause a group of muscles, or if it's systemic, in the case of the statin drugs, can cause this degeneration of the cell walls and the enzyme CK and the myoglobin to
Now, there's a very important interactive piece of information here that I think needs to be added to your accurate description of rhabdomyolysis. And that is that when the muscle membranes break down and the muscle protein leaks into the blood, the kidney is capable of filtering it out and dealing with it if it's not overwhelming. If it is overwhelming, as in the cases you're describing, or if there is a subclinical compromise to kidney functioning to begin with, or something else is going on to begin with, then what will happen is that the myoglobin and the CK will actually poison the kidney. So you start out with the kidney functioning well, or well enough to keep these things from leaking out. And then if the concentration is too high, you do in fact poison the glomeruli, the little filtration pockets, and you wind up with dysfunctional kidneys, which can progress because of the rhabdomyolysis, which can progress to genuine kidney failure. But the point that I think you're making is that there are things that happen in life, sometimes things that we choose to do, like the baggage handler's job or the CrossFit training, and sometimes things that we don't choose to do, like getting trapped under a bus, which can cause the CK elevation to happen without kidney failure, but if it's high enough, it will produce kidney failure.
Right. Now, I have friends, close friends, on statin drugs, and they refuse to listen to reason. They are losing what's Dr. Seneff, you know Stephanie Seneff from MIT?
Yes. Yes.
She is really, really good at research.
She's excellent.
She's amazing, and she's written a very long article on statin drugs. That's after you told me about the statin drugs and the systemic rhabdomyolysis. I looked it up on the internet, and I read her very long article, and I took my time reading that. But it's an amazing piece of work, and it explains everything about how the cell uses energy, how it makes energy, and how the cell wall starts becoming permeable instead of semi-permeable, as you taught me. And that's a whole different ball game. So Anyway,
could you please send me, for my education, could you send me Dr. Seneff's article link?
Yeah, I absolutely will. And I'll even send you my newsletter that I wrote on this, because I started out by crossing. Okay, so you're not going to believe this, but I'm familiar with a building in San Diego, which is a corporate office building, but it's not, the big towering skyscraper that you might picture. It's a 2-story maybe at most, and it's kind of in a cool design district. And in one of these corporate offices, there are large windows, and there are these 2 or 3 looming giant rubber figures that are looking out the windows, kind of like reaching. They have arms extended. They're very muscular. They're huge, about 7 feet tall easily, and bulging muscles, and they're green. They look like monsters, but they're actually clowns. And this is Rhabdo the clown. It is the mascot of CrossFit. And in the complete pictorial representation of Rhabdo the clown, he's standing in a pool of blood, and he's got his guts spilled on the floor around his feet, including kidneys, and he's hooked to a dialysis machine. So this is the mascot of the CrossFit company.
I have my mouth hanging open. And while we're talking, I am going to open up a browser, and I am going to look for Rhabdo the clown. This is quite extraordinary. This is a level of craziness that you have to work hard to achieve.
Yeah, I didn't know what those clowns were for a long time, and when children pass, they point them out, and their parents take pictures of them, and everybody crows and shouts with glee and amusement. But this is a dark mascot.
Rhabdo. Yes, I see Uncle Rhabdo.
That's right, Uncle Rhabdo, sometimes also called Pukey the clown.
Pukey the clown. Yes. This is crazy. This is beyond bonkeroonies. This is very scary crazy.
But this is our new fitness craze.
Well, yes, this is our new fitness craze. And what I am doing right now is I am taking this particular Rhabdo, the clown, Uncle Rhabdo, and I don't understand why I cannot turn my phone off. That's strange. Okay, power off. We'll try that. I'm taking this image, and I will post it. I will reference your article, and I will post this picture on Dr. Rima Truth Reports and discuss the manufactured insanity of this. But the problem, Sophia, as you well recognize, is that Uncle Rhabdo and the CrossFit model of insane disproportion is resonating with something profound in the society, or people wouldn't do this. They would say, as you and I are saying, this is crazy. Oh my, this is bonkers, and they wouldn't go near it. It's resonating with something.
Well, okay, you're the psychiatrist. So in CrossFit, there are different workouts. There's a workout for pregnant women, a workout for the elderly, a workout for, I guess even children if you bring them in. Workout for fat people. There's a Navy SEAL workout. And one of the things that Greg Glassman said in an interview was, SEALs won't do the fat people's workout, but fat people want to do the SEAL workout. So there's this overreaching. When we were little, my mother would say to us, your eyes are bigger than your stomach.
My mother too. Everybody's mother.
And so today, there's eyes bigger than the stomach syndrome seems to me the reason why people they buy what they can't afford. You know what I'm saying? They want to be what they can't get to overnight.
Well, I think we're talking about something very profound here, Sophia. I think what we're talking about is that when you have lost touch with your body, with your emotions, with your psyche, with your innate ability to regulate yourself and eat healthily and regulate your inner and outer functions. When you've lost touch, you can be pushed and shoved, and you can be motivated by fantasy that doesn't have feet in reality. So I am overweight, and I want to be, and I'm older than I think I should be in terms of the way I look and feel. And so I want a magic solution, and I go into a gym like this with great advertising and great marketing, and I have no touch with what my body actually wants to do or what's helpful for it or how to eat in order to become regulated rather than dysregulated. And so I leap into a magic carriage of, in this case, CrossFitness or a new pair of shoes or a fashion handbag or the latest supplement. And now, Shazam, I'm magically transported into a different state of being because I have no connection with my own state of being. I have no connection with my body. I have no connection with the emotions that I've been distracted and fluoridated and drugged out of feeling and educated out of feeling because I'm a product of the core curriculum, and I'm not taught to think, to feel, to discern. I'm taught to respond emotionally and not question. So I'm separated from myself by my toxic food, by my toxic entertainment, by the toxic microwaves in my environment, and by my toxic inputs from advertising and from manipulation. And of course I'm going to go do something magical and insane. And of course the appearance of Uncle Rabdo prostrate with fatigue, with his organs, including his kidneys, literally dropping out of his body, that's not going to bother me. It's going to go past my sensitivities because they're so dulled. How can I be insensitive? How can I be sensitive to anything when my pineal gland, my moral compass, has been calcified by the fluoride in my water and probably in the dialysate liquid too?
That's a very good analysis. And I'm going to ask you another question. By the way, Greg Glassman and CrossFit have 80 in-house lawyers. 80. And
that's like Monsanto.
Never lost a lawsuit. Have had Rabdo lawsuits. Never lost a lawsuit. And they do believe that the incorporation of the clown figure as the mascot, Rabdo the clown in particular, is disclosure of the possibilities. Now, I'm not going to fault Glassman and CrossFit necessarily. I fault the user as well. Because I'll tell you this, I'm going to ask you this as a psychiatrist. I've been very athletic all my life. And there are times when I've really pushed it. And what happens immediately when you cross a certain tolerance barrier in the tissues, you get a twinge or a twang. You get a sharp warning pain. You get a, hey, you're hurting me. And then it's your option to keep doing what you're doing or to let up and do it, to a little lower intensity, or to stop.
The culture of athletic performance is push past the pain. It's the CrossFit culture. You want to get that score. You want to break that record. You want to do what your buddy is doing, and you want to drive each other, and everybody on the team is looking toward you. Push that body.
Exactly. And they have coaches. They have coaches and a clock, and then your other team members. And this is catching on. The 24-hour fitness, they have the Ignite team now, and you're encouraged to show up at 6 in the morning and do a team workout and play off each other, just like that. And so this team workout thing is really, really erupting everywhere. And I think psychologically, you can be taken into zones where you're not your own advocate in terms of your physical limitations. And this is, because seriously, once you get injured, it can be bad news. You can have a layup of several weeks, and then you can't do what you want to do, and you have to shuffle around and either take painkillers or anti-inflammatories or, rest, and that's no fun. But to actually push to the point that your cells explode and die, this I don't understand.
Think about how people live in terms of connection and disconnection. Most people have their major connections on devices, on their computer, their Instagram, their Facebook, and that's connection. And of course, there's a piece missing. It's the human piece. And of course, people are biologically and psychologically meant to be pack animals. We are healthy in a community. We are unhealthy in a community. Now, there are plenty of sick communities and dysfunctional families and so on, but our biology and our psychology is designed for group functioning with individual capacity within the group. And we're not very happy, very healthy, or very well integrated. We are separated from an essential part of ourselves when we are isolated. And this is isolating. So now we have people literally tearing their bodies apart based on what you're describing in order to be part of a team. This is like a rebound phenomenon, I think, to compensate for the desperate despair of isolation, whether or not you're taking pictures of your food and posting it on Facebook, which is not a relationship. So I'm wondering whether what we're seeing isn't a some kind of inchoate attempt to balance what is so profoundly imbalanced. And if I have to sacrifice good sense and physical comfort and health, which I'm pretty disconnected from anyhow, or I wouldn't be eating the crap that I think is food from the industrialized food system, if I'm so separated from health and so separated from others, but I can have a team, I can have a group of people that I can do something with excitement and endorphins and dopamine and feel something with other people, then I'll show up at 6 o'clock in the morning and I'll bust my muscle cells open for you.
Yeah, that makes sense. I understand what you're saying. In fact, I saw a parent and her 2 children the other day, and they had gone over to the hut at this facility. It was an athletic facility, to the grill area, and gotten something to eat. And then the mom